I wired $25,000 at 2 a.m. to save Dad from paralysis. He needs surgery by 8 a.m. Mom sobbed. 5 days later, I found him on a ladder, washing my brother's new Mercedes. That was the night I learned the difference between duty and decency. The phone rang at 2:14 a.m., a noise so sharp and intrusive it felt like a physical assault on the silence. For a 32-year-old ICU travel nurse, that sound was instantly coded in my brain as Code Blue or catastrophic family emergency. There was no middle ground. I had just finished my fourth consecutive 12-hour shift, running on stale espresso and the kind of deep, punishing guilt that only distance can breed. I fumbled for the phone on the nightstand, my hand knocking over a ceramic mug that skittered across the hardwood floor. My eyes burned. My hands still carried a phantom tremor from the adrenaline of my last few shifts. Chelsea, save Dad. He's going to be paralyzed. My mother Marla's voice on the other end was a ragged, blood-curdling scream. Every molecule of exhaustion vanished, replaced by a shockwave of ice water flooding my system. She was sobbing, deep, gasping sobs that sounded like she was drowning in the sound. Mom, what? Slow down. I tried to engage the methodical, clinical part of my brain, the part that dealt with codes and crash carts and triage. It was useless. Spine, ruptured disc, permanent paralysis. Each word hit me like a physical blow. You have 6 hours, Chelsea. Are you listening to me? If we don't transfer $25,000 before 8 a.m., they will cancel the OR, and your father will never walk again. I sat bolt upright in bed, the sheets tangling around my legs. $25,000. Cash. My nurse brain finally kicked in. Why cash? Where is the insurance? Dad has coverage. I pay for it every month. It's Dr. Kinsley at the private neurological institute. She wailed, her voice breaking on every syllable. He's the only surgeon who can save the nerves right now, but he's completely out of network. The damage is so severe, Chelsea. Your father is in so much pain, and they're saying if those nerves die, that's it. He'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Dr. Kinsley demands a cash retainer up front. $25,000 before he'll even scrub in. She was crying so hard, I could barely piece together the information. We tried to apply for a medical loan tonight, but we got rejected instantly. You know how bad our credit is, Chelsea. We're drowning in debt. And the banks won't touch us. We have no liquidity, nothing. I'm watching your father suffer right now, and there's nothing I can do. The lie was perfectly tailored to my fears. I knew my parents were terrible with money. It was exactly why I paid their mortgage directly to the bank instead of giving them cash. It was entirely plausible that their credit score was ruined, and no bank would lend them a dime. I was 400 miles away, but I believed I was the only thing standing between my father and a life of pain. I shook Vaughn's shoulder hard. My fiancé, a solid engineer, sat up immediately, his mind switching on instantly as he took in my tear-streaked face. It's Dad? I choked out, tears finally breaking free. Emergency spinal surgery. They need $25,000 in cash by 8 a.m., or they'll cancel the operation. Vaughn ran a hand through his hair, already reaching for his glasses. Can't they transfer him to an in-network hospital? Get a second opinion. There's no time. My voice rose, matching my mother's panic. If the spinal cord is compressed, waiting for a transfer could mean permanent damage. And you heard Mom, their credit is shot, they can't get a loan. We're their only option, Vaughn. We're the only thing standing between Dad and a wheelchair. I watched something subtle shift in Vaughan's face. He didn't like it. I could see the immediate distaste and skepticism. But he was also not the kind of man who would let my father become paralyzed over money we had sitting in a savings account. Okay, he said quietly, resignation already in his voice. Okay, let's do it. With trembling hands, we logged into our joint savings account on my phone. The wedding fund, the money we had scraped together for 3 years, saving every bonus, every extra shift, every tax return, was sitting there. $25,847.32. Our future. Our celebration. Our new beginning. In a few quick, automated clicks, I initiated a wire transfer of $25,000 to my mother's bank account. The confirmation screen glowed in the darkness of our small Bay Area bedroom. Available balance $847.32. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that number, thinking I had just bought my father's future. I didn't know I had just bought a car. The confirmation screen glowed in the darkness, replacing $25,847.32 with a balance of $847.32. But the relief I expected never came. Instead, the silence began. I had texted Mom the wire transfer confirmation number immediately, my hands still shaking with residual fear and adrenaline. She responded in less than a minute. Her message was brief, a perfect echo of the transaction we had just completed. Thank you, baby. You saved him. I'll call you when he's feeling better. Vaughn had pulled me against his chest, and I cried into his T-shirt while he stroked my hair. It's okay, he murmured. We'll save up again. We'll push the wedding back a year. Your dad is worth it. I believed him. More importantly, I believed her. To understand why I fell for this, you have to look at the context of my life in those days. I was an ICU travel nurse in the Bay Area, earning between $4,000 and $5,000 a week depending on overtime. People hear that number and think I was rich, but I wasn't. I was just a high, paid zombie running on caffeine and guilt. I worked 12-hour night shifts in the ICU, dealing with codes and crash carts and families watching their loved ones die. Then I'd drive home in the morning light, sleep for 5 hours if I was lucky, and wake up to pay my parents' bills from 400 miles away. I paid their $3,500 monthly mortgage, their health insurance premiums, their property taxes, their car insurance. I was their financial life support system. I believed I was being a good daughter from a distance, making up for the fact that I'd moved to the Bay Area for better pay instead of staying close to home in the high desert. I was so exhausted, so desperate to maintain my role as the dutiful daughter, that I missed every single red flag waving right in front of my face. For 5 days after the transfer, there was radio silence. It wasn't total silence, but it was eerie. No updates on the surgery. No text saying Dad was out of the OR. No photo of him in recovery. Just Mom's vague, clipped responses. I called twice a day, my anxiety rising with each failed connection. He's resting, Chelsea. The doctor said he needs quiet. I'll call you when he's feeling better. Her voice always sounded a little too bright, a little too rehearsed. On day 3, the rational part of my brain, the nurse who knows that surgeons contact family immediately after a major procedure, started screaming. But I shoved it down. Maybe it was an ultra-specialized procedure, maybe out-of-network care worked differently. I clung to the belief that the absence of news was, somehow, good news. On day 5, Vaughn's suspicion crystallized into something concrete. On day 5, Vaughn's suspicion crystallized into something concrete. He came home from work and went straight to his laptop, his forehead furrowed. He was frowning at his screen with the intense concentration he usually reserved for analyzing complex engineering schematics. "Chelsea, come here," he called out. I walked over, still in my scrubs, the smell of sanitizer and hospital cafeteria lingering on the fabric. "What is it?" "Log into your dad's insurance portal, the one you pay for." "Why?" I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "Just do it." I pulled up the insurance website on my phone and logged in with the credentials I used to pay the monthly premiums. I navigated to recent claims. I scrolled through the dates for the last week, then the last month. "There's nothing here," I said slowly, the words feeling heavy and wrong. "Exactly?" Vaughn's jaw was tight. "Why is there no anesthesia bill on the insurance portal?" Even out of network surgeons use in network facilities, the anesthesiologist would bill insurance. The facility fee would bill insurance. Something would show up. 5 days is plenty of time for a claim to generate. A cold stone dropped into my stomach, heavier than the exhaustion I usually carried. Maybe it hasn't processed yet. Maybe there's a delay. It's been 5 days, Chelsea. When you work at a private institute, they process quickly. I stared at the empty claims list. The gnawing feeling in my gut that I'd been trying to ignore for days suddenly became impossible to suppress. The anxiety turned into a bitter, terrifying certainty. "We need to go there." I heard myself say the words flat and firm. "We need to drive down there right now." Vaughn didn't argue. He was already closing his laptop. "I'll pack a bag." "We'll leave in 30 minutes. We drove 6 hours through the night from the Bay Area down to the high desert, taking turns at the wheel." I couldn't sleep. I kept running through medical scenarios, trying to invent a plausible reason for the insurance silence. Maybe the surgery was so specialized it hadn't hit the insurance system yet. Maybe there was a billing delay. Maybe they had forgotten to file. Every maybe sounded thinner and more pathetic than the last. "Stop," Vaughn said gently, reaching over to squeeze my hand as I stared out at the dark ribbon of Interstate 5. "We'll know soon. We're almost there." I nodded, gripping his hand tightly. I was prepared for anything: a wheelchair ramp, a hospital bed visible through the window, my father moving carefully in a back brace. But what I was actually driving toward was far more shocking than any worst-case medical scenario I had envisioned. 6 hours of driving through the night, but the real journey ended when the sun rose over their driveway. We pulled into my parents' high-desert driveway just as the sun was coming up, painting the vast, empty sky in shades of painful orange and pink. I was prepared for anything. A wheelchair ramp bolted to the porch. My father pale and thin, visible through the living room window. My nerves were frayed from the drive, but I was ready for the role of the dutiful daughter, the nurse, the savior. Instead, time stopped. My dad, Leland Hayes, the man supposedly recovering from emergency spinal surgery 5 days ago, was climbing a ladder. Not struggling up a ladder. Not being helped onto a ladder. He was climbing it with the agility and confidence of a man who had never had back pain in his life, much less catastrophic disc rupture. He moved like a teenager, reaching up to the roof with a sponge in one hand and a bucket in the other. He was whistling. Actually whistling a cheerful, airy tune while he scrubbed the roof of a shiny, black Mercedes Sprinter van parked prominently in the driveway. The thing was gorgeous. Custom rims, tinted windows, a paint job that gleamed like liquid obsidian in the harsh morning light. It was enormous, a mobile luxury apartment on wheels. I got out of the car, my legs moving on autopilot. My knees felt weak, not from the exhaustion of the drive, but from a sudden, dizzying sense that the ground was literally crumbling beneath my feet. Every trace of the previous night's fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, searing realization that was taking hold. The $25,000 didn't go to a neurosurgeon. It went to a dealership. I stood there, frozen, staring at my father's perfectly healthy back as he stretched to reach a spot on the van's high roof. No surgical scars, no pain, no wheelchair. Just a man washing his son's new toy. Right then, Jagger, my 29-year-old brother, walked out of the front door. He was wearing a vintage band tee, shirt and ripped jeans, a coffee cup in hand. He looked relaxed, happy, almost glowing, not malicious, just utterly excited, like a child on Christmas morning who had gotten exactly what he wanted. He didn't even seem surprised to see me. "Sis, you're home." He grinned, walking over and patting the side of the massive van like it was a prized horse. "You're just in time to see her. Isn't she beautiful?" I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was a physical impossibility. The air felt too thick, too charged with betrayal. Jagger ran his hand lovingly along the van's sleek surface. The down payment was all I needed. I've been trying to make this happen for 2 years, but I could never get the cash together. Once I hit the road with this beauty, the gigs will pay for the monthly installments. I can finally tour the West Coast properly, hit all the festivals. This is going to change everything for my music career. It's a solid investment. I looked at his face. He genuinely believed it. He was so completely, utterly delusional that he thought taking my wedding money through an elaborate lie to buy a luxury vehicle was a legitimate business partnership, like I was a venture capitalist who had just funded his startup. Down payment? The word came out as a whisper. My voice was trembling, though I couldn't tell if it was from rage or shock. "Yeah," Jagger laughed, completely oblivious to the bomb he was dropping. "What? No way." The dealer ran Mom and Dad's credit, and it came back over $750. The guy was super impressed. Said they were model customers. That's why they approved the financing for the remaining $35,000 so fast. "We just needed your cash to unlock the 20% down payment they required for the premium model." The world tilted sideways. Over 750. Their credit score was over 750. I stood there on the driveway, the desert sun already beating down on my head, and the full picture snapped into focus with brutal clarity. For 2 years, I had been paying their mortgage directly to the bank, $2,800 on the dot every month. I paid their insurance premiums, their property taxes, everything that could hurt their credit if it went unpaid. My kindness over the last 2 years hadn't just been used. It had been weaponized. My dutiful payments had built their perfect credit score, which they then used to scam me out of $25,000 while lying about medical emergencies and fake paralysis. Chelsea. Jagger's smile was fading now, finally noticing that I hadn't said anything. "You okay?" Before I could answer, my mother appeared in the doorway. Marla Hayes, 60 years old, wearing a floral bathrobe and holding her own coffee mug. When our eyes met, I watched her face cycle through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, guilt, calculation, and finally, defense. The moment of ultimate betrayal was here. Marla emerged, her face cycling through guilt and calculation, ready to deploy the final weapon, gaslighting. She walked down the steps and came to stand next to Jagger, placing her hand on his shoulder in a protective gesture that made the cold rage churning in my stomach boil. "You drove all the way down here?" she asked, her voice pitched high, as if this were a casual, unexpected visit. "We weren't expecting you." "Where's the paralysis, Mom?" My voice came out flat, dead, devoid of all inflection. "Where's the wheelchair? Where's the emergency spinal surgery that was going to happen 5 days ago?" "Oh, honey." She had the audacity to look relieved. "The doctor called back after you sent the money. He said Dad just needs physical therapy after all. Isn't that wonderful?" "The MR I showed it wasn't as bad as they thought. We didn't want to worry you with all the back and forth medical stuff." "You didn't want to worry me?" I repeated the words slowly, tasting the bitterness of the lie on my tongue. "That's right." Mom nodded, warming to her story now, confident she had closed the medical gap. "And look, while I have you here, I know you're probably upset about the van. But you have to understand. Jagger has been so depressed lately, so stuck. This van gives him a purpose, a real shot at making his dreams happen. You know how much his music means to him. When he gets famous and starts making real money from his tours, he'll pay you back double, triple, even." Vaughn stepped forward from where he'd been standing by our car, his face pale and drained of color, but his jaw was set so hard I thought his teeth might crack. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, which only made it more terrifying. "This isn't an investment, Marla," he said. Each word was precise, like he was presenting evidence in court. "This is grand larceny. You looked your daughter in the eye, lied about her father being paralyzed, fabricated an emergency surgery, and stole her wedding fund to buy a toy for your unemployed son. Do you understand what you've done? You committed wire fraud. You are sick." Mom's face flushed a deep, ugly red. "How dare you speak to me that way? We're family. This is between me and my daughter. I'm about to be family too?" Vaughn cut her off, his voice dropping even lower. "And I'm telling you right now, if you were anyone else, we'd already be on the phone with the police. We have the texts. We have the wire transfer record. We have documented proof of fraud. You wouldn't dare." Mom's voice wavered slightly, the calculated defiance failing for a moment. I looked past her at my father, who had finally climbed down from the ladder. Leland Hayes stood there with his sponge still in hand, water dripping onto the driveway, pretending to be very interested in a spot he'd missed on the windshield. He wasn't defending his wife. He wasn't apologizing to his daughter. He was just avoiding. I looked back at Mom, who was already preparing her next excuse, her next manipulation, her next way to twist this into somehow being my fault. For the first time in my life, I didn't see family. I saw a black hole that would never be full, no matter how much of myself I threw into it. I saw people who had turned love into a transaction, and I was always the one paying. Seeing that I wasn't accepting the investment narrative, Marla switched tactics with the speed of a seasoned manipulator. She stepped closer to me, her face shifting from defensive to wounded. "Why are you being so calculating with your brother?" Her voice took on a hurt, bewildered tone. "Vaughn is an engineer making great money, and you're a high-paid nurse, pulling in thousands every week. You too can earn that money back in a few months. It's just a number in an account to you. But your brother, he has a sensitive soul, Chelsea. He needs this van to find his inspiration, to finally break through and make something of himself. Stop acting like a victim when you're the one with all the money. The words hit me like a slap. In 2 sentences, she had transformed the entire narrative. I was no longer the daughter who had been robbed through an elaborate medical lie. I was the greedy villain, the cold-hearted sister hoarding wealth while her struggling artist brother just needed one chance. Are you serious right now? I heard myself say, my voice rising, grief and rage mixing into something that made my vision blur. You told me Dad was going to be paralyzed. You said I had 6 hours to save him. You made me think. I was stressed. Your father was in pain. And I panicked. Mom's voice rose to match mine. What kind of daughter keeps score like this? What kind of person demands their money back when it's already helping the family? Helping the family. I was shaking now. You stole from me, Mom. You lied about a medical emergency to steal my wedding fund. Oh, here we go with the wedding. Mom rolled her eyes dramatically. You can have another wedding, Chelsea. You can have 10 weddings with your salary. But Jagger only gets one shot at his music career, and he's running out of time. He's 29 years old. Do you want him to end up a failure? The implication was clear. If Jagger failed, it would be my fault for not supporting him, for being selfish with money that should have been our money, because that's what family does. Vaughn leaned close and whispered in my ear, we have the texts. We have the wire transfer record. We have proof of wire fraud. We can call the sheriff right now, Chelsea. I looked at them. Really looked at them. Jagger was walking back toward the van, still running his hand along the paint job, entirely lost in the delusion of his investment opportunity. Dad was standing nearby, still avoiding, still silent. And Mom was watching me with calculating eyes, already planning her next move. If I sent them to jail, I would be the evil daughter forever. The family narrative would be written by Marla, the master storyteller. I wanted a different kind of justice. Something that would hurt more than a court date. Something that would last longer than a fine. I looked straight into my mother's eyes and said, calm and clear, fine. Jagger is your investment, right? Your golden ticket to future wealth? Exactly, Mom said, relief flooding her face. I knew you'd understand once you. Then let that investment support you from now on. The relief vanished, replaced by sudden confusion. What? You heard me. If Jagger's music career is such a sure thing, if this van is going to make him rich, then he can take over the bills I've been paying. The mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes. All of it. Don't be dramatic, Chelsea. Mom waved her hand dismissively. You're upset. I get it, but let's not. I'm not being dramatic. I interrupted, taking a step back, deliberately putting distance between us. I'm being done. This ATM is closed. Chelsea Marie Hayes! Mom shouted as I slid into the passenger seat of our car. Don't you dare drive away from me. Don't you dare cut off your own family. But I did. Vaughn started the engine, and we pulled out of that driveway while Mom stood there screaming, and Dad just watched, silent, avoiding. I didn't send a warning text. I didn't write an explanation. I canceled every single payment. Then, I disappeared. As soon as we turned the corner out of the neighborhood, the rage began to cool, leaving behind a hard, crystalline core of clarity. I had set a boundary, and now I had to defend it. Vaughn reached over and took my hand. What are you thinking? He asked quietly. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that they have no idea what's coming. Somewhere between mile marker 150 and 150, one on Interstate 5, I made the decisive move. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The mortgage payment was scheduled to auto draft in 3 weeks. On the 1st of next month, $2,800, like clockwork, directly to the bank that held their mortgage. I clicked into the settings, Mortgage Direct Pay. Cancelled. Then I opened the insurance portal, their health insurance policy that I'd been paying for 2 years. The one that cost $700 a month. Policy auto pay. Cancelled. The $3,500 per month life support I'd been providing was severed. Just like that, no phone call, no warning email, no certified letter giving them 30 days notice. I didn't send a warning text. I didn't write an explanation. I was just done. Completely, utterly finished. Vaughn glanced over from the driver's seat, noticed the glow of my phone screen. What are you doing? Cutting them off. The payments. All of them. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Good. Here is what I understood about my parents and Jagger. What I'd learned from 32 years of watching them operate. They heard my words in that driveway, but they didn't believe them. They thought I was bluffing. They thought this was just another fight that would blow over because all our other fights had blown over. In their minds, I was the eternal fixer. The responsible one, the girl who always paid the bills in the end because she was too afraid to let them fail. Their arrogance blinded them, and I was counting on it. They believed that by the 1st of the month, the money would magically appear in their accounts, as it always did, that I would cool down, feel guilty, and resume my role as the family's financial safety net. When we got back to our apartment in the Bay Area, I did something I'd never done before. I blocked their numbers. All 3 of them, Mom, Dad, and Jagger. Then I blocked them on social media, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. I didn't just cut them off financially. I disappeared from their world completely, leaving them alone with their $60,000 mistake and no way to reach me except through intermediaries they didn't even know I had. Vaughn watched me do all of this from the kitchen table, where he was eating leftover pizza and trying to process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. They're going to realize it in 30 days, he said quietly. When the mortgage payment doesn't hit, then they'll come for you. Let them come, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. I'm not holding the checkbook anymore. What if they show up here? We'll call building security. They're not on the visitor list. What if they track you down at work? Hospital security doesn't play around with people who harass staff. They'll be escorted out. Vaughn sat down his pizza slice. You've really thought this through. I had time in the car to think, I said. They made their choice when they bought that van. Now they get to live with it. My first line of communication was Aunt Paula, my mother's estranged sister. I knew I could trust her honesty, even if her connection to my mother was tenuous. Through Aunt Paula, I learned everything I needed to know about what was happening down south while I rebuilt my life in California. Paula's texts were short, factual bulletins. Paula, they haven't figured it out yet. Your mom is telling everyone at church about Jagger's big tour plans. She's so proud, showing people pictures of the van. Paula Jagger left yesterday, loaded up the van with his band equipment, and headed out to the desert. said something about a music festival circuit and connecting with his artistic roots. He took 2 friends with him. Paula, your dad bought a new flat-screen TV, 65 inches, had it delivered today. That last text made me laugh, a bitter, sharp sound. They were actively spending money they didn't have, living like lottery winners in the brief window before reality came crashing down. I focused on my life. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, working 4 12-hour shifts a week instead of 3. The overtime pay was incredible. I watched our wedding fund slowly start to rebuild. $847, then $1,500, then $3,200. Vaughn and I talked about postponing the wedding until we had the money back. But we also talked about something else. What if we just did it? He said one night while we were cooking dinner together. City Hall. Your friend Sarah as a witness. My brother. Then dinner somewhere nice. That's not the wedding we planned. The original plan had been partly for my parents, for Mom to show off to her church friends, for Dad to walk me down the aisle and feel important. No, but it's a wedding, Vaughn countered. And honestly, after all this, I kind of just want you to be my wife. I don't want to wait another year for a party. I thought about it while I stirred the pasta sauce. I thought about how the big wedding would have been another opportunity for them to manipulate or perform. City Hall sounds perfect, I said. We got married on a Tuesday afternoon in October, 3 weeks after the driveway confrontation. Sarah and Vaughn's brother Mike were our witnesses. I wore a cream-colored dress I already owned. Vaughn wore his nice suit. We said our vows in front of a judge. And then we went to a fancy restaurant where we ate steak and drank wine and laughed about how we'd just saved $20,000 by skipping the big wedding. I didn't tell my parents. They weren't invited. They had already taken their piece. They had nothing left to take. I had set the trap. Now all I had to do was let them walk into it, and they would, because they always did. November 1st came, and the silence broke exactly how I knew it would. Not with a phone call, to me, but a frantic text to Paula. 3 weeks had passed since I'd canceled the payments. 3 weeks of quiet. 3 weeks of watching our new savings account tick upward. My parents and brother were still living in blissful ignorance, convinced I was just mad and would eventually come crawling back. They believed in the narrative of the dutiful daughter too much to believe I could truly leave. I was midway through a 12-hour shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed. Paula's text came through in fragments, the kind of frantic typing that suggested she was hiding in a bathroom stall or her car. Paula Power Company sent final notice. Your mom called me screaming that the bank made a mistake with the autopay. I stopped walking in the middle of the corridor. A resident nearly crashed into me with a medication cart. Paula, I told her to check with you, but she said she can't reach you. Of course she couldn't. She ended up selling your dad's fancy espresso machine to keep the lights on. The one he bought last Christmas. $400 on Facebook Marketplace. I slipped into an empty supply closet and read the message again. The trap had snapped shut. The espresso machine, Dad had bragged about it endlessly. Top of the line, makes cafe quality lights. Translation: Marla had bought it with money that should have gone toward their mortgage, and now they were liquidating assets to survive. I typed back to Paula with steady fingers. Don't tell them how to reach me. Let me know if anything else happens. Paula, are you sure? Your mom sounded really scared. I'm sure. I pocketed my phone and returned to my shift. A code blue was called on the second floor. I ran toward it without looking back, the drama of my family already fading into the background of real emergencies. Over the next few months, Paula's updates painted a picture of absolute ruin. Each text arrived like a news bulletin from a distant war zone. Clinical. Factual. Devastating. By the second month, Paula texted that Jagger had come home. Paula, he isn't working. Your mom keeps making excuses for him, saying he's regrouping and networking. The van is parked in the driveway like a monument. They were trapped. They couldn't sell the van because that would mean admitting the lie and destroying Jagger's career. But they couldn't afford the payments or the insurance. The van, their golden ticket, was sinking them. In the third month, things deteriorated further. Paula, Dad tried to get a part-time job at Home Depot, but Mom made him quit after 2 weeks, claiming it was humiliating for a man his age. They are eating through their credit cards now. The irony was heavy. They preferred financial ruin and loss of their home to the humiliation of honest work. Month 4 brought car troubles. Paula. The van needed new tires, which cost $800. Jagger told them he'd pay them back when the sponsorship comes through. They put it on a card. I read each message in my car before driving home, absorbing the data. I never responded with more than, okay, or, thanks for the update. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer solutions. I was a researcher observing an experiment, watching variables collapse in real time. Vaughn noticed the change in me. He'd catch me staring at my phone with an expression he couldn't quite read. You okay? He asked one night as we sat on the couch, his arm draped around my shoulders. I'm fine, I said. Just tired? Chelsea? He turned my face toward his. You're smiling? I hadn't even realized it. They're drowning, I said quietly. And I'm not jumping in to save them. Good. Vaughn kissed my forehead. The 5th month brought the phone call I'd been waiting for. Paula texted first. Paula, your dad is about to call Vaughn. He's desperate. Just warning you. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when Vaughn's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then at me. I nodded. He answered on speaker. Vaughn, son. Dad's voice was smaller than I remembered. Thinner. I hate to bother you, but we're in a bit of a bind here. What kind of bind? Vaughn's tone was perfectly neutral. He could have been asking about the weather. We need about $500 for groceries. Just a loan. We'll pay you back next month when Marla's pension check comes in. My knife stilled against the cutting board. $500. That was 4 months of car insurance on the Mercedes Sprinter van sitting in their driveway. That was the cost of the espresso machine they'd already sold. Vaughn didn't even glance at me for permission. He spoke into the phone with surgical precision. You have a $60,000 Mercedes in the driveway. Sell it? Silence. I could hear Dad breathing on the other end, rapid and shallow. That's Jagger's van. He needs it for what? Vaughn interrupted. He's not touring. He's not working. It's a luxury vehicle that's bleeding you dry. Sell it, or take out a loan against it. But don't call me asking for grocery money when you're sitting on an asset worth more than most people's annual salary. Vaughn, please. Marla will be devastated if... Then Marla should have thought about that before she stole $25,000 from her daughter. The line went dead. Vaughn set his phone on the counter and returned to scrolling through his tablet as if nothing had happened. My hands were shaking. I put down the knife before I cut myself. Thank you, I whispered. He looked up. You don't thank me for basic decency, Chelsea. That's the baseline. I crossed the kitchen and wrapped my arms around him from behind. He smelled like the detergent we always bought and the faint trace of his cologne. He smelled like home. They're not getting another scent, he murmured. Not from us. Not ever. I know. The 6th month brought the final, devastating piece of news. Paula sent a text that summarized the scene. Paula, I saw her walk in with that red velvet box, the one with the brass latch. I saw it in her hand. She came out without it. She sold your grandmother's jewelry. I'm sorry, Chelsea. The red velvet box. The one containing Grandma's garnets. The necklace and earrings she'd left to Marla with the explicit verbal request that they'd eventually go to me. Marla was stripping the house bare. She was selling heirlooms, everything that wasn't nailed down because she was terrified that repossession would hurt Jagger's feelings. The golden child's chariot was more important than the family legacy. The trap was holding fast. The hunter's long game was nearing its end. The final blow wasn't delivered by me, but by the person they'd sacrificed everything to protect. The 7th month brought the phone call I knew was inevitable, yet still caused my breath to hitch. Paula didn't text me about it. She called. They lost the house, she said without preamble. Her voice was rough, choked with a mix of sadness and resignation. The bank took it. The eviction notice came yesterday. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot. My 12-hour shift had just ended. The California sun was setting behind the hills, painting everything gold and red, an incongruously beautiful backdrop for such devastating news. The house I had effectively paid for years, the house they had risked everything to acquire a $60,000 van. Where are they going? I asked, my voice thin. I was running on empty, but I needed the data. I needed to know the final outcome of the experiment. I don't know, Paula admitted. Your mom won't talk to me anymore. She thinks I'm feeding you information. Her voice cracked slightly. She's right, of course, but she won't admit she's wrong about anything else. Then Paula delivered the final, perfectly ironic piece of information. Chelsea, I saw Jagger yesterday. He was loading stuff into the van with his friends. He didn't even help your parents pack. He just took his things and left. I closed my eyes. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. Jagger, the golden child. The entire reason for the elaborate lie, the $60,000 black hole, had driven away in the Mercedes Sprinter van when the eviction notice came. He'd saved the car. He'd abandoned the people who'd bought it for him. He'd left them on the curb with nothing. He had proven, definitively, that his loyalty was purely transactional, and he was the one taking the assets and fleeing the debt. The black hole had finally consumed itself. Thanks for telling me, Paula, I said quietly. Are you going to... She didn't finish the question, but I knew what she was asking. Was I going to intervene? Was I going to rescue them at the very last moment, stepping back into the role of the dutiful daughter to save their pride, if not their home? No, I said. Silence stretched across the phone line, then a long, quiet exhale from Paula. Okay. I understand. I hung up and sat in the car for another 20 minutes, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. Somewhere in the desert, my parents were packing their lives into boxes, preparing to leave the house they'd lived in for 30 years. Somewhere, Jagger was driving that van down a highway, windows down, music blaring, free of the consequences he had orchestrated. I started the engine and drove home to Vaughn. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel vengeful satisfaction. I felt nothing at all. Just a quiet, cool emptiness. It was the feeling of a machine that had finally had a faulty wire clipped. The noise was gone. The obligation was gone. I was, for the first time in my adult life, truly free of their expectations. I pulled into our driveway, the calm of our small California apartment waiting for me. I was ready for the next phase. I was ready to build a new life entirely, one defined not by what I owed, but by what I deserved. The emotional arc of the rescuer was over. The arc of the builder was beginning. 4 years later, the silence was total. Our life was peaceful, protected by a fortress of boundaries. I stand in my kitchen in the California suburbs and watch my daughter destroy a banana. Lily is 1 year old, which means she's at the stage where food is less about nutrition and more about performance art. The banana is smeared across her high chair tray, her face, and somehow the wall behind her. She looks at me with enormous blue eyes, Vaughn's eyes, and laughs like she's just invented comedy. "You're a menace," I tell her. She claps her banana-covered hands in response. Vaughn appears in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, already dressed for work. He takes in the scene and grins. Should I call hazmat? Probably. He crosses the kitchen and kisses the top of my head, then leans down to kiss Lily's cheek. She immediately tries to grab his tie, but he's learned to tuck it into his shirt before entering her blast radius. This is my life now, modest. 3-bedroom house with a mortgage we can actually afford, healthy savings account, a daughter who will never know what it's like to be the unfavorite child, a husband who sets boundaries like he's building fortresses. We are happy because our life is peaceful. The mail comes at 10 a.m. I'm wiping banana off the wall when I hear the slot in the front door clatter. Lily is now contained in her playpen, gnawing on a rubber giraffe and babbling to herself in a language only she understands. I sort through the usual assortment of bills, grocery store flyers, a wedding invitation from one of Vaughn's co-workers. Then I see it, a handwritten envelope, no return address, postmarked from the desert. My hands go cold. I know that handwriting. It's shaky now, less confident than it used to be, but it's unmistakably Marla's. I should throw it away. I should light it on fire in the sink and wash the ashes down the drain. Instead, I open it. The letter is 2 pages, written on cheap lined paper that looks like it came from a dollar store notebook. Marla's handwriting slopes downward on the page, getting smaller and more cramped as it goes. Dear Chelsea, it begins. Not Brie. Not sweetheart. She's forgotten that she ever called me those things, or maybe she knows she's lost the right to them. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you probably hate us. But I'm writing to you anyway because I'm your mother and I need you to understand what happened to us. I scan ahead. The letter is exactly what I expected. A sob story. They're living in a trailer park on the edge of town now. A double wide with rust stains and a leaking roof. Dad's health is declining. She doesn't specify how, which means he's fine and she's lying again. They survive on his pension and her part-time job at a grocery store. They barely make rent. Jagger is gone. He moved to Portland 2 years ago with a girl he met online. He doesn't call. He doesn't visit. He doesn't send money. The van died somewhere in Oregon and he sold it for scrap. The golden child has left them behind. We are alone, Marla writes, and I can feel her trying to inject emotion into the words, trying to make me feel something. Your father cries at night. He misses you. He wants to apologize, but he doesn't know how to reach you. We made mistakes, Chelsea. Terrible mistakes. But we're still your parents. Doesn't that count for something? I flipped to the second page, my jaw tightening. Aunt Paula let slip that you have a daughter. Of course she did. Paula has a good heart, which makes her terrible at keeping secrets. Please, Chelsea, let us see her, let us be grandparents. It's the only joy we have left. We don't need money. We don't need anything from you except a chance to know our granddaughter. Don't punish us forever. Don't let your anger rob that little girl of her family. The letter is signed with both their names. Something falls out of the envelope when I shake it. A photograph. I pick it up with numb fingers. It's me at 5 years old, sitting on Dad's shoulders at the county fair. I'm holding a stuffed elephant I won at the ring toss. Dad's hands are wrapped around my ankles, holding me steady. I'm laughing. He's smiling up at me like I'm the best thing he's ever made. I stare at that little girl and feel nothing but pity. She doesn't know yet. She doesn't know that in 27 years, the man holding her will choose her brother over her. She doesn't know that her mother will steal from her and then blame her for being upset about it. She doesn't know that family will become a weapon used to extract resources instead of a source of safety. She still believes love is unconditional. I hear Vaughn's car in the driveway. He's home for lunch, something he does twice a week so he can see Lily during the day. He walks in, takes one look at my face, and stops. What happened? I hand him the letter without a word. He reads it, standing in the kitchen, his expression hardening with every line. When he finishes, he sets it on the counter like it might contaminate him. What do you want to do? He asks. I look down at the photo again. That little girl on her father's shoulders. That man who used to make her feel safe. They don't miss me? I say quietly. They never missed me. They missed the $25,000. They missed the $3,500 a month. And now that they're broke and alone and Jagger's gone, they want access to Lily. They want a new retirement plan. Vaughn nods. So what do we do? I walk to the counter and pick up the letter. Then I tear it in half. Then in half again. I do the same to the photo. Right down the middle, separating 5-year-old me from the father who's holding her. The pieces fall into the trash can like confetti. I pull out my phone and open my messages with Aunt Paula. Do not give them my address. If they show up here, I will treat them as trespassers. If you tell them where I live, you and I are done. Do you understand? 3 dots appear. Disappear. Appear again. Paula, I understand. I'm sorry. Chelsea, I never should have mentioned Lily. No. You shouldn't have. I set the phone down and look at Vaughn. He's watching me with something like pride. You okay? He asks. I'm perfect. I walk to the playpen and lift Lily into my arms. She smells like baby shampoo and banana and everything good in the world. She grabs a fistful of my hair and yanks it, giggling. Oh, I say, laughing. You're lucky you're cute. Vaughn wraps his arms around both of us. We stand like that in the kitchen. A unit. A fortress. A family. Blood makes you related. I whisper into Lily's soft hair. But loyalty makes you family. She won't remember me saying this. But I'll remember. And when she's old enough to ask why she doesn't have grandparents on my side, I'll tell her the truth. I'll tell her that breaking the cycle isn't about fixing the people who broke you. It's about building a wall so high that they can never climb over it to hurt the people you love. The letter is in the trash. The photo is destroyed. The door is closed, and we are finally completely free.